So the first thing about freedom, when you look to it, there is different areas of freedom. And when we talk about freedom, we can talk about what it really is. What is freedom? Is it a concept of the mind? Is it a thought? Yes, it is. Freedom is also a concept of the mind, is also a thought. We can think that we are free. And by thinking that we are free, we build a concept, conditions around what will make us free. If we are citizens of the USA, we are free. Because there is a democracy. This is a thought pattern. And of course there is some freedom there as well. But there is some non-freedom there as well. So the concept of freedom from the mind helps us to understand maybe what is freedom, but is not really connected with freedom itself. Freedom itself is much more an experience, a feeling in the depth. This is another layer of freedom. The feeling of freedom. And the feeling of freedom, when you look to the depth of it, if you really move deeply into it, it's something which is always there. Basically, we are free beings. And then if you move a little bit more deeply, there is a little conflict there. And I try to come in the 10 minutes which are left to come to the conflict. But let's move more to the surface. What's interesting to look at is when do we lose the connection with this deep inner feeling of freedom? And then the first trap is when you think of that and you bring your awareness there, or your conscious there, immediately what comes forward is because of. It's because of the society we live in. It's because of my children. It's because of the job I have. It's because of my parents. That's a big one. So we move into the because of. So it seems that external things, influences, are interfering with our own feeling of freedom. So when you look more deeply into it, what is it exactly interfering with? What's so annoying about your job, or so difficult? Or the obligation? What's the guilt you feel towards your parents, or the obligation? So when you kind of take it a little bit more under a loop, not yet under a microscope, but under a loop, what you see is that in this we are confronted with feelings inside ourselves, with patterns, with structures inside ourselves which are interfering with us finding ourselves in this basic feeling of freedom. So when you look into these patterns, it's often that these are things we don't want to experience. We don't want to feel. We don't want to make a choice. We don't want to manifest ourselves. We don't want to take form. Is where we don't want to take responsibility, we lose our freedom. I'll give a very simple example. Obligation. Obligation is a wonderful thing when you look into it. It's absolutely structured by the mind. Obligation is something Basically, we structure based on guilt. We're obliged to. We have to. I have to go to my work. I have to take care of my children. I have to brush my teeth. I have to visit my mother. It's full of have-tos. And when there is a lot of obligation, the feeling of freedom basically is gone. So when we kind of take these have-tos a little bit more under the loop. So if we don't do it, there is two choices. Either we feel guilty, I'm a very bad child because I didn't visit my mother. Or we move into fear. If I don't do this, I lose my job. If I don't do this, I will be rejected. I'll be not good enough. And when you take this a little bit more under the loop, if I don't do this, I'm not a good person. And if I don't do this, then I have no right to exist. We lose a lot of freedom in the constant struggle we have to try to deserve our right to exist, to be nearly good enough. And this is on a lot of different levels. It can be on the level of the heart, that we are able to give love to everybody, to try to please everybody, to try to take care of everybody, to be not rejected, to be good enough. There's a secret deeply hidden inside ourselves. If everybody around us is satisfied, is happy, is honky-dory, then the love will come back. They will start to love us. We are good enough. We are good enough when the whole world is happy. That's quite a heavy burden. So in this, we lose a lot of the connection with our own inner freedom. Then there is this whole area of the conflicts, the pain, the suffering, the joy, the happiness, whatever is inside ourselves, we basically don't want to feel. And when I say, you don't want to feel happiness, everybody says you are crazy. But it's so common that we don't want to feel happiness. Who wants to feel happy when his partner is sad? Who wants to feel full of joy when somebody else is in real pain? It's so often that we also postpone happiness, move ourselves out of it. Which is, when you think about it, not really helpful. Because, just take the example that you're miserable. You really feel miserable. And the moment you enter a room with people, everybody goes down. Everybody starts to feel miserable. And when you with everybody enter the street, the whole city becomes miserable. The whole country. The whole world is miserable because Bart is miserable. So when you really, really feel miserable, then the joy of another person can be really uplifting. It seems to be selfish to be joyful about somebody who is miserable, but it can be quite uplifting. So if there's any feeling, any thought we're in conflict with in a moment, or especially on a longer period, this conflict is drawing us out of this inner state of freedom we have. We get entangled, we get catched, we get caught. And we get caught in a way which is quite horrifying when you think about it. Because we get caught in a way that also it narrows our minds, it narrows our awareness, our consciousness, our perception. It narrows us to a point that it seems that conflict we have is the only thing which still exists. Anger, fear, jealousy, negative thoughts, whatever is the conflict. And all the other resources we have, the richness of resources, at that moment is lost. We move in despair. The freedom is lost. We are caught. And when we are very deeply caught for a longer period, we want to die. Because this is not life. This is not what I want to have. We feel an absolute lack of freedom. This is our life. This is how it is. No possibility to move. Doesn't mean that freedom is not there. Freedom is there all the time. So basically when we got caught and we kind of look a little bit more deeply into it and we examine it and put it under the microscope, we're always caught in a conflict, in something we don't want. We are angry, but we don't want anger. But still we have to be angry. Because if we're not angry, we're hopeless. And we don't want to be hopeless or helpless, because if you're hopeless or helpless, you're a sucker. Whatever reason is there is a kind of a knot of feelings and things we don't want. We don't want to go too deeply into our anger, because if we really move deeply into our anger, there is maybe such a lot of anger that we become destructive. We will destroy the whole world. I've been working for more as 30 years, I think, by now with people. And there is a big group of people when you start to talk about anger and they say, okay, but there is something inside me, a rage. If I start to express this in the world, it will be the end of the world. It's just human rage, human anger. And the deepest rage, again, when you look to it, is so liberating, is so beautiful. The deepest rage we have is the rage that we gave away the responsibility of our own right to exist to authorities. When you really move to the depth of your anger, to the depth of your rage, you come to a point, okay, I'll decide. I'll exist. I'll be who I am. Enough. Enough of caretaking, enough of doing my best, enough of this heaviness in my life, of trying to please the whole world. I'll do it my way. And that's very liberating. It's very liberating because in expressing this rage, I'll do it my way, it's the only way you can do it. It's your own natural way. And this own natural way, the only way you can do it, this is so much connected with freedom. This is where we find our own inner freedom back. So freedom and naturalness go side by side. Freedom and a deep feeling that you have the right to exist, that you just exist. Even the concept of the right to exist is crazy, as if there is a right to exist. You exist. You're here. There is nobody who say, okay, you're a plonker. You don't have the right to exist. People are saying it, but it's an illusion. You are here. The freedom meditation. So there is 3 levels of freedom in this meditation coming forward. This is the level of the mind. Freedom of the mind. And to move more deeply into freedom of the mind, what we first need to move into is silence or peacefulness. This is creating freedom of the mind. So what we do is that we start connecting with the ID. And for those who don't know what the ID is, it's about 30 centimeters above your head. It is not that precise, but it's a kind of a connection with the spiritual realm of ourselves. And we move from the ID downwards to a point which is exactly in between the brows, which we call the point of silence. It's got a lot of other names as well. And try to move a little bit inside that point. If you move a little bit inside that point, what will be created quite easily is an inner silence, silence of the mind. To move more deeply into our inner freedom, what's also kind of quite important is the openness to experience whatever you're able to experience. To open up the heart in a way that it's open to connect and to experience in a free way. So the next stage is that we move down to the heart, the area of awareness. And again there, what you can try is to move a little bit more deeply into the heart. And if you move a little bit more deeply into the heart, there is an area which is very, very pleasant to be there. It's called the secret garden area. You just move in a little bit into the chest, and there's an area where you feel it's peaceful, it's calm, there's a kind of tranquility there. And this peaceful, calm background is a background from which every experience can enter or arise. So then we move down for the 3rd layer. So the 3rd layer is connected with the pelvic area. The pelvic area is connected with manifestation and existence. So I like you to move to the pelvic floor. This is on top of the bones. And just rest there. And if you move a little bit down towards the coccyx, and you just let the coccyx be, just be in the surrounding of the coccyx, so it can come forward, is a deep feeling of emptiness. Or you connect with emptiness in that area. So again, this emptiness is like empty, but it's not empty. A lot of things are happening there, but what's happening there, whatever comes forward, if you kind of look at it from the perception of emptiness, it just takes form, and you are the form and you're not the form. And then the form will pass, so you don't get hooked. There is a freedom there which is even more deeply as the freedom of the mind and the freedom of the heart. So after we kind of try to kind of move into this emptiness area, we try it. Then we kind of move down to our feet and just enjoy for some time the connection between the feet and the ground. And then I'd like you to regress back. Just leave all the 3 stages to regress back in your life to a moment that you really felt free. And just try to reconnect with this feeling of freedom. It's still inside yourself. It's something which is so healthy because it clarifies so much on the 3 levels where you lost freedom. The level of existence, the level of being, and the level of thinking. And again, the only one who can make us lose our freedom is ourselves. You can be jailed, you can be tortured, people can do whatever they want towards you. That doesn't mean that you have to lose your feeling of freedom.